As you gaze upon this property, you may find it hard to believe that at least 10 spirits are said to haunt here. From one ghost who still considers themselves the ruler of the house, and if they don't like you, they're sure to let you know, to the anguish cries of a young man who met a horrible, brutal end. Hey there, dissectors. Today we travel all the way to Australia, to a beautiful house in New South Wales, and its name is the Monte Cristo Homestead. Said to be a house that was filled with love and good fortune, so how the hell did it end up with a reputation that would make many people run away? Christopher William Crawley was a guy struggling to make ends meet, with a wife and 7 children to feed. He managed to purchase 2 parcels of land in the town of Junee and built a family home. By 1878, the Great Southern Railway line opened, and this was a turn of events for the family. You see, Crawley saved up all the money that he could to purchase a licence to build a railway hotel right opposite the soon-to-be-opened railway station. The small village all benefited from the new business coming in, and before long, Crawley was a man with power and money. But it doesn't seem to be something that went to his head in any negative way, as locals thought he was a generous man who would do anything for his community. The family had knocked down their original home and were now living in a little brick cottage. But with all the money now coming in, maybe it was time to splurge a little and build a property to be proud of. So the little cottage was converted into a servant's quarters, something that can still be seen to this day. The new property was classy, designed in a late Victorian style, and was 2 stories high with views of the entire town. So far you must be thinking, well, how the heck did the place get so haunted when it was obviously a loving household? Friends, you know that a public face isn't always the full story, and the Crawley family may have held their heads up high and smiled, but they hid a lot of horror and heartbreak. On December 14th, 1910, Christopher Crawley died in his homestead from blood poisoning and heart failure. The blood poisoning is said to have been caused by a carbuncle on his neck, which had become infected from the continuous rubbing on the starched collar of his shirt. Elizabeth Crawley, his wife, was beyond devastated at the loss of her husband. After his death, she only ever left the house twice until she died aged 92 on August 12, 1933 from a ruptured appendix. It is said that she locked herself away, spending most of her time in the attic space where she built a small chapel, and many believe her spirit lingers there still. In life, Elizabeth had been the ruler of the household, you might say. What she said was law, and with her gone, things started to fall apart a little. By 1948, the last member of the Crawley family left the home, and for more than a decade, this property was left abandoned. In that time, there were numerous caretakers that would take care of the place, but even their watchful eyes couldn't stop the property from being vandalised and damaged. In a bid to save as much as possible, original furnishings were taken out of the house and sold off, leaving the home to wait patiently for someone else to come along and give it the love it desperately needed. While the house was waiting for some new owners to come along, horror struck. In 1960, a caretaker named Jack Simpson was shot to death on the porch in front of the homestead. The murderer had apparently got himself prepared for the killing by watching Alfred Hitchcock's movie Psycho 3 times in a row. After carrying out the shooting, the man then carved the words "Die, Jack, ha ha" into the shed door, where they can still be seen to this day. Luckily for the Monte Cristo homestead, the death of the caretaker did not put people off purchasing the home. In 1963, Reginald and Olive Ryan bought the home for £1,000 with the hopes of restoring all the property, including the servants' quarters, stables and ballroom, back to their original beauty. But while their intentions were honourable, that doesn't mean that the house was totally welcoming, and one of the ghosts, let's just say it doesn't like animals. When they first arrived at their new home, their cat and dog refused point blank to go inside, and it got so bad the animals eventually ran away. Now this would have sent alarm bells going off in my head, as we all know animals pick up on the paranormal. One evening when the Ryan family came home, they discovered all their chickens had been strangled to death. On another occasion, their parrot was also choked to death while in its cage, and a litter of kittens that were being raised in the breakfast room also met a rather brutal end, shall we say. And it doesn't stop there, dissectors. Olive has heard her name being called out numerous times by an entity. The children witnessed spirits walking about in old-fashioned attire and felt cold hands on their skin. The creepiest thing, though, was when the family was driving back after a night out, only to discover that every single light was on in the house, and it was clearly visible from the street. They knew that the lights were off when they left, so as they opened their front door cautiously, imagine their surprise when all the lights were suddenly back to how they'd left them. So who decided to haunt the Monte Cristo homestead? And what was the event that led them to stick around? Well, it makes sense that the Crawley family might still reside here after death. Christopher Crawley has been described as a gentle spirit, much like he was in life, and haunts the room in which he died. As for his wife Elizabeth, she is still very protective of the home she loved and will make anyone she doesn't like feel unwelcome as she blasts freezing cold air onto their skin. Christopher and Elizabeth Crawley's 10-month-old granddaughter named Ethel died in 1917 after a nursemaid dropped her on the stairs. At the time, the young carer was beyond heartbroken and stated that she only fell after an unseen force pushed her. Did an angry spirit cause the death? Many believe it was a simple accident, while others think the nursemaid dropped the child on purpose. Whatever the case may be, children who visit the museum on the grounds will become anxious and upset when they get close to the stairs. Other guests have said that they felt like someone was pushing their backs. Could this be what the young carer felt? Visitors have also mentioned feeling tiny cold hands grip theirs as they walk upstairs. And the deaths don't end there. So I think things are starting to become a little clearer as to why the house is so haunted. While working for the Crawley family, one of the maids walked up to the top floor balcony before throwing herself from it. The bleach mark where they tried to remove the blood on the ground below can still be seen to this day. Her spirit is said to haunt the top balcony, with visitors to the property claiming to have witnessed a female figure stood there, while others have also heard her pacing the floor, like she's getting herself ready to end her own life. Another member of staff is also said to have given birth to a young boy called Harold. When he was still very young, he was involved in a serious accident after he was hit by a coach. Even though he survived, the head trauma he suffered sadly caused him to become mentally disabled. When he wasn't with his mother, he would be kept in chains inside the coach house. The local children found out about his condition though, and they would come over to the home to mock him, calling him a monster. And if life couldn't get any harder for this poor boy, his mother died while he was chained to her bed. This in itself is terrible, but her body was not discovered for some time. After the horrors he endured, Harold lived out the rest of his days in an asylum. Today, his spirit makes itself known at the homestead by the sound of chains rattling from the shadows. But Harold was not the only one who had a horrible experience inside the coach house. You see, a young stable boy named Morris felt terribly sick one day and decided it would be better if he stayed in bed at the coach house. Finding out that the young boy was not going about his chores, his master decided to teach him a lesson on how not to be lazy. And he did this by setting fire to the straw bed the young guy was kind of resting on. Only his plan backfired. Morris was feeling weak and couldn't get up quickly from his bed as the master had expected. He died where he lay, and to this day, people still hear him screaming. From a feeling of nausea and an overwhelming sense of sadness to lights that switch on themselves and off, Monte Cristo Homestead certainly has a darker history than many would have believed. Unexplained mists creep around the property, with disembodied voices whispering from the shadows, and that's not to mention the orbs and poltergeist activity witnessed by visitors. Since 1993, the Ryans have turned the property into a thriving business. People come from all over the world to witness what many consider Australia's most haunted house. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, this place is one that everyone will find fascinating. So my friends, what do you think of this haunted location? It really does go to prove that appearances can be deceiving. People thought that the Crawley family had a perfect little life, but things were certainly a lot darker behind closed doors, and the spirits are still there to this day to remind us of what went on at the Monte Cristo homestead. As always, until next time, dissectors, stay safe out there.